We'll just start with this. Here's what you got, something like this, a casting. So the next step is chasing it. Before we get to like the basic ingredients, like here is what I would say is your basic vocabulary of tools, right? You want to have a pair of gloves. You want to have a pair of safety glasses. For using a lot of this, you want to use a face shield. We have face shields. There are work gloves in there. Which work gloves don't I want you to use?
Welding.
Yeah, the welding gloves. Use work. You can use yours, which you should have. You can use mine, but don't use our foundry ones. They're not necessary. Ear goggles are good to use when you're using these because hearing loss happens gradually. You don't notice it. It doesn't happen all at once. It's little by little. So, hand tools are always like really the best. Wire brush is probably everybody's going to use. You know, remember what I said? Like we didn't start cleaning them up. And actually, most of this I want you to do outside. I'm talking to you now just because you can hear me, and out there I have to scream louder and you can't hear me. But basically, any grinding, like with a grinder, outside. No grinding inside. Even when you're just wire brushing sand and all that stuff, why do it inside? But you guys should probably have your own files. There are metal files back there. You know the difference. I didn't get out a rasp. Does everybody know the difference between a rasp and a file? Just say, if you don't, just say so. It's okay. A rasp is that coarse tool used for wood.
Fell out of the bus onto the floor, and this whole piece like broke off of it.
You know it's good to put the tools back where, but there's a box there that says file. There's a box that says rasps that has like rasps like these, which are plaster wood. This is a wood rasp. Should I pass it around? Feel the teeth. That's a different tool than a file. These are pretty much all-purpose. You can use these on metal. Don't use that on metal. It just wears out the teeth and doesn't really help you. Likewise, don't use these. Hammer and chisels. There's a box there that says cold chisels. Don't use the ones that we use for carving plaster and so forth. And above all, please don't use the wood chisels. So like a cold chisel, and some of these are quite dull, but like once you cut those things off, and you guys have seen what that looks like, and I said you're mostly gonna grind it or file it back, you know, chiseling, and aluminum is a soft metal, so you know, you can really work it by hand. I'm gonna show you how to use this today, and actually the goal for today, the best goal, would basically for you guys to be, take this, cut this part off, and if everybody got that, and you can give this back to me, and basically we're gonna weigh this, and you're gonna pay for that metal, okay? You're gonna weigh it before you start getting into grinding stuff away. Once it turns into dust, I can't melt it down and use it again. But whatever you give me back, like the cup and the gates, the sprues, I can melt it down again. Everybody good with that? If everybody got that done today, I'm gonna walk out of here feeling like it's a success. If you also get a little bit more chasing done, a little grinding, a little filing, neatening it up, be my guest if you wanna work on your wood project or whatever else you wanna accomplish, okay? I don't have 13 of these, right? So this is like, sort of like, you're gonna have to. And when you're first learning to use it, I think it's not a bad idea if one person is using it, like two partners are there, like observing, watching, like how do I use that tool? And before we even get to that, the other thing that I often talk to people about is aluminum is a different metal than, for instance, bronze. One reason people cast in bronze is because it does this thing called patina. Are you guys familiar with that term? Mm-hmm. You know what patina, what that's all about? Why that happens?
Oxidation.
Well, yes, it is. Well, It's the copper and bronze that's reacting to salt primarily. Salt and acids. It's not actually.
It's not oxygen there.
For instance, iron and steel also patinas, but we have another name for that.
Rust.
Rust, which is just reacting to the atmosphere, oxidizing. But patina is just like a chemical reaction where the actual, the surface, the very little surface of it is changing its molecular structure, which often changes color. Aluminum really doesn't do that, okay? When you get this thing out of here, it doesn't have to become shiny aluminum like you might expect it to. It can. That's all up to you. That's a purely aesthetic choice. But what I would always suggest, and I actually didn't tell you guys to bring an old toothbrush, but I start by getting off the loose sand, right, and soot that's gonna fall off anyway. That's not gonna last a long time. With my pieces, I literally, do you think you're gonna make this shiny? Or, okay, so look, we're gonna cut this off, right? Actually, let me just say, the reason I'm asking Anna is, I always tell people, it isn't art yet. This is the result of the process. Look at it. There are some times where somebody goes to a whole lot of trouble to cut all this off and then starts building something very similar, like a base or something else. And I'm like, so if you're gonna do that, why did, like, sometimes this makes a handsome little base. Or sometimes, literally, depending on what, I wouldn't say in this case, but the language or the architecture of that is actually just as artistic or contributes to it. So it's like what you cut off, where you cut it off and all that, I always pause and just look at what I got before I just start hacking away. For some things like this, it's fairly obvious that artistically I would probably take this off. Or like with Pippa's, like her sprue isn't gonna make her dragon better. But I would look at it, right? And at least pause. The other thing is about, before I start just going and brushing off all the sand, which does, as we say, start to bring up the shine of the metal, right? When I get all that sand off the surface, it's not polished. Remember what I said to you about polishing is different than just like getting the initial thing? The thing about aluminum is it doesn't patina, it doesn't react with salts, acids, and oxygen the way other metals do. You can paint it. There are metal dyes. I don't have them. I don't particularly like the shades that they do with aluminum. But sometimes the darkness and the grit of, as I say, as it comes out of the fire, actually is not bad, especially if you work back and forth between light and dark that's already there. So, you can knock it back in like certain areas, like this and not this, or this and not this. You can work the piece to get a value range, is what I'd be thinking about, at least before I just make it all silver. It also is not going to necessarily be shiny silver. It's going to be really much more of a matte, grayish silver, unless you start polishing it up. Is that good with everybody?
What do you do to polish it?
Like this to this. See, grinding is going to make a grind mark. That's physically ripping the surface away.
That's not
It's
good.
going through a thing like wire wheel, which is actually kind of aggressive, but usually doesn't scratch it up unless you already, I'm betting you don't have it smoother than what this is gonna do. Just like sandpaper, if it's already this smooth and I use 220, I make it rougher. You know what I mean? It's a gradual succession. So this is a really heavy duty coarse wire wheel on something going more like 12,000 RPMs. This will really rip the stuff away, but it's more aggressive on the surface. These wire wheels you use on a drill, which is turning way slower. The grinder is gonna grind, and then you get into filing, sandpaper, grits of sandpaper, down to like literally, like a fine, and then it's just Most of polishing is elbow grease, pure and simple. You can get down to like a polishing cream or whatever, you know, polish like a not wax, but whatever they call those that has some liquid in it. Okay. The right angle grinder. We have a whole, like, sort of different types. Actually, I guess I pulled out 2 Makitas by chance. Most of them have 2 flanges. Actually, they need to have 2 flanges. Has anybody gotten these yet? Okay, good. So, you know, I have some in the shop. I'm going to use those today. I don't even know if they're carrying them at the art store, but you can get these other places. You're both everybody who works in metal is supposed to have 2 of these, because this is what we call a consumable. As you cut with this or grind, it wears away. This is a cutoff wheel. Everybody see that it is a thin biscuit? This is what you cut it with, and it's made to go perpendicular to your cut, not come in at an angle. And the most important thing about a cutoff wheel is once you start making a cut, you can't start tweaking this thing around when it's in the groove. So you can start, you know, if you've got to get at something and you're cutting at an angle, okay. You can't get in a cut and then start torquing this thing. It will shatter. When it's spinning that fast and it shatters, a jagged piece flies off, that's not good. And that's why you need to have, you know, protection on it. Grinding wheel, pass this around. Everybody put your hand on that and feel the difference. That's a thick, it's basically almost the same composite, but it's thick. This is what one looks like when it's more broken in. You see the aluminum residue in there? Kali and Alfonso, seriously, come where you can see this, because I want to show you how to use this tool, and then I don't want to have to, I want to set you free and not have to worry about you. This is made to be used at about a 45-degree angle, okay? I didn't bring out a brand new one. A brand new one, where is it now? That one's almost brand new. It's pretty square, right? Actually, is it brand new? Flip it over, let me see. It's you see how it's square? Well, and you see how the shoulder, as I call it, is rounded? That's because the grinding position is like this. Not on its edge and not flat.
What's that one called again?
This is a grinding wheel.
Okay.
This is a cutoff wheel.
Oh, cut off versus.
When you go to get them, that's what they're basically universally called. These are 4.5-inch, all-purpose metal with a 7/8 inch arbor. The arbor is this it's the post that the opening goes on. All right. Did everybody see what I just did? Done? All of these, when you go in that closet and you're trying to get one that all works and everything, you're going to have to know how to change it. The one on the bottom usually has a little oblong thing that fits, it's not a circle, so when it gets down on there, it doesn't turn, the bottom. The top one has a little lip on one side and it's flat on the other. Oh, it doesn't really matter. Yes, it actually does. Because this is so thin, when you're using a cutoff wheel, this slides over there and there's a little curb or flange or whatever you want to call it that keeps it centered. If you put this on with that little lip down, what will or will not happen?
Liable to shift.
You will never be able to tighten it enough for this. Remember how I told you about all the instruction I got, Ingrid, or didn't get? Nobody ever told me this. They
How
just
many
point.
accidents did you have?
You just have to figure, you guys always have to be alert. Don't think that I can remember everything, even if I might know it. Be alert, use your common sense. So if you flip this over this way, when you're doing a cutoff wheel, you'll be able to tighten it. All these have wrenches, and if you're lucky, you'll find a wrench that fits. But you won't necessarily. Also, all these machines have basically a button so that this thing is spinning, and when you press the button, you spin around, it'll lock in a certain position. That allows you to tighten and loosen, right? So your thing isn't just free spinning. You don't have to tighten this with all your might and main. Just like hand tight. Hand tight.
The wrenches are with the machine?
No, so let's walk, it's perfect. Usually I start in here, but I just. So what is this tool called?
Cut-off grinder.
Right angle grinder. A good guess. It's a there's a lot of different kinds of grinder. There's a right angle grinder. I think we got 4 of them. They might all work. This is where they go. When you put it away, if you wrap the thing around it, then this doesn't turn into like 4 cords like an octopus. I know you can hear me back there. You guys can hear me? There are discs in here. Use discs that you guys are welcome to use. It's a funny thing, you guys are supposed to have 1 grinding wheel and 2 cutoff wheels because you'll basically use it, and some people get away with never buying their own. I'm not going to fret about it. I will tell you this, a broken in grinding wheel to me works better than a brand new one. Because a brand new one is rigid and square, and I don't have the same touch with it. So, you know, what some happens is I have brand new ones here and ones that are like a little used. They still have a lot of use on them. And every person goes in and grabs a brand new one because I'd better to have a brand new one when I use it. And actually it's rougher on your piece. You have less control. You break it in and it actually works a little nicer. Here are the wrenches. And you may take one out, right? So if you're using a grinder and you want to have a grind off wheel and a cut off wheel, so you're going to need to switch it out there when you're working outside and you want to take wrenches, be my guest. Once the wrenches are all gone, then I can't help you. Wrenches here, grinders here, appliances or consumables as we call them here, including these actually go on cordless drills, but we keep them here. These all go on right angle grinders, the big coarse ones. Questions about that? Brilliant. You know where the jackets are.
Extension cords for the right angle.
So there's in the other cabinet, when you walk straight in the other tool crib, the bottom one says adhesives, and to the right of that I think it says extension cords, and then there's a drawer that says small extension cords.
Okay.
But the trick with that is, if you don't find what you need in there, what do? What I do, I walk around and find them all over the shop that somebody used it, didn't put it away, then you use it and you put it away. Questions about where the important stuff is? You know where the